My mic is muted. That's a great way to start this off. Here we go. Oh, it's going to be one of those nights. All right, guys, welcome back to the Movie Battleground. My name is Aaron Knoll. I hope you guys enjoyed the week off from aired matches. Clearly, it's showing in the way that this has been handled thus far. But we are back, ladies and gentlemen, after a couple of months of anticipation and prep, after 16 intro matches to get all 32 of our competitors acclimated to the format, whether they were vets, rookies, or somewhere in between. We are here to the REBORN tournaments. This is what we've been building to. 2 brackets, each with 16 players, one in which everybody has a 1-0 record, the other in which everybody has an 0-1 record, playing tournament style to become number 1 contenders to shoot for the Movie Battleground title. And this is obviously the first match of the 0-1 bracket, and I couldn't have picked 2 better guys to start because, quite honestly, these two have a very parallel beginning. Tonight we have Jake Riese versus Andy Sweet, and their stories are both very similar. They were both competitors in our opening week of Movie Battleground, which was better known as the Guinea Pig Week, because all those matches were kind of guinea pig matches where we were still figuring things out. They were both brand new rookies who are both also, for what it's worth, newer people to the community. They'd never debated before, at least in this type of format. Maybe in real life they had, but they made their debuts, and in no easy task, they made their debuts against former champs. In Jake's case, he made his debut against the man who still holds the honorary title of Movie Battleground champion, Joe Fairley. In Andy's case, he made his debut against Ryan Permison, who held 2 titles in other TMG debate leagues. So needless to say, neither of these guys were playing slouches. And I would say, for what it's worth, they both brought it in their matches. Andy's match obviously ended up going to the blind round in what was a very, very close fight from the get-go. Jake's, on paper, maybe a little less close considering it was a 3-1 victory to Joe, but in the aftermath of that match, all the judges and speaking and helping with Jake and giving him some advice told him that he had them on board for some of his arguments for a bulk of it. It was just that rookie experience of having that confidence and not giving up on yourself is what sold him down the river for Joe. But as we saw in that video game round, when he had a confident outlook on his question, he took him to school pretty easily. And so I'm very excited to see these two go at each other. I couldn't have a better first match in this bracket, and I'm going to stop killing time before I mute myself again or shut the whole stream down. Let's just get into it. Up first, introducing him, he is with a record of 0-1. He is Mr. Andy Sweet. Andy, how's it going, sir?
Good. Thanks for having me back. I'm ready to give it another shot after that heartbreaker last time. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And heartbreaker is the only way to describe it. Again, for somebody who is a brand new rookie, that was a very, very close match. My question to you is, what did you take away from that match, and what did you kind of bring into this one in terms of preparing for a different opponent?
I think the first thing I brought in is just kind of brushing off that, even though it was a loss, I still learned a lot from it, especially going up against someone with a lot more experience. So just kind of being more detailed in my notes, my arguments, and actually thinking about the movies I'm picking a little bit more, so I can actually defend them a little bit better. That blind round killed me. I'd only seen that 6 Underground, I think, one time.
That's all you need to see
it. Yeah. So, I was a little more select in my picking of my choices this time.
Absolutely. Well, I'm glad to have you back, sir. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back for just 1 minute while I introduce your opponent. He likes to call himself the Jake Tato. He is Mr. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I can be your buddy for trivia, Mr. Jake Riese. How's it going? He was excited at that one. Wow. How's it going, Jake? How are you feeling?
I'm here. I'm having a great time. Thank you for having me as usual. Also, the things that he said about playing against a guy who is experienced and hopefully getting better.
Absolutely, man. And yeah, I mean, we could spend ages on the amount of advice you got after that last match. It seemed like everybody was, even Joe to an extent, was rooting for you and it just quite didn't work out because of that. You were a little bit of that rookie experience. Without getting too much into it, what was the biggest takeaway from your first match that you think can help you improve here?
Did get a lot of help, as you mentioned, and it was a great time. Got some new friends, so that's cool too.
Yeah, him and Henry have spent every night together since. I'm not kidding.
It's a beautiful thing.
There's a reason Henry wasn't allowed in this call.
Henry has been fantastic. Can't ask for a better mentor in this type of game than him. And he is also a delight to have around the Tato 24-hour challenge, and anyone is welcome there. But yes, enough about that. We will have some fun with the thing I'm in right now, the movies and the battlegrounds. Yeah.
Yes, that's how it works. That's a war attitude right there. As I go ahead and bring your opponent back into the screen, and we'll go ahead and go over the rules of the game. All right, guys. So Movie Battleground is a best of 5 rounds. First to 3 points wins. Each round is worth 1 point. If a competitor does happen to get 3 points in a row, that is a win by knockout. Neither of you have experienced that yet. I know you're not looking to do it tonight. If we have a 2-2 tie after round 4, that will activate the blind round, although we'll get to that one if we happen to get there. One of our players does have a little bit of experience in that one. Rounds number 1 through 4 are regulation debate. The competitors were given the questions ahead of time. They have had time to prep. For what it's worth noting, with the tournament, I've made some adjustments based off of competitor input, and if they so want it, they do get a little more minimum time to prep for these if they wanted it. So these guys have had a little more than even in their first match to prepare. The way it goes is like this. You'll have 60 seconds of an opening argument. That will be followed by 2 minutes of a chance to kind of explain your debate and flush it out. There will be a 4-minute open debate round, at which point you guys will scrap and fight and go back and forth for who can get the most points in, and then you will have 1 minute to wrap it all up at the end. After each round, I am not alone in this battle because why would we change up the format? 16 matches in. I have 3 great judges backstage in the form of Mr. Jacob Barber, Mr. Haven Pendergast, and Mr. Kevin Poss, pending hurricane internet issues. Hopefully he's able to stay with us. We control a lot of things here at Movie Battleground. I do not have a hold on Mother Nature. Her number's in my speed dial. I'll get there eventually. But we don't have it right now, and so that means, which I guess also dates this match. Not that we've ever tried to hide when we record these things, but hey, it is what it is. So with that said, guys, do we have any questions from either of you?
No, sir.
Nope.
All right. All right, guys, let's go ahead and move on to question number 1. And this question was selected off the back of the very first Movie Battleground match in which Caleb Hansen and Frank Newberry absolutely eviscerated my intent of praising Matt Damon with a question and just absolutely taking a big old grand dump on him. I appreciated it. It was a great round no matter what, but that is what ended up happening. And thus, I have decided to make up for that. The first of every new thing here in Movie Battleground will contain a Matt Damon question, and thus the first batch of the tournament in the first round of said tournament is a Matt Damon question. That was very poorly worded, but Matt Damon, maybe he'll show up like that Beetlejuice and Candyman guy. Guys, God, this is terrible. Your question is, what is the best movie featuring Matt Damon released in the 2010s? I will say, spoiler alert, none of his best Bourne films came out in the 2010s, so those aren't here. But he did have some great films come out in the 2010s. And so as I bring up your timer, I believe if I have it correct, Jake, you were spun by the Wheel of Fate as the favorite, and thus you have chosen to go first on questions 1 and 3. Do I have that correct, sir?
I would have to go back into the Facebook chat to remember such activities. But yeah,
right.
That guy knows things. Let's go with him.
Okay, I'm gonna trust Andy for being prepared because God knows we're clear I'm not. All right, Jake, you are up first. The time your opening will start when you begin speaking.
Okay, my apologies for that situation. But the movie I chose is an absolute gas. See what I did there? And that is Ford versus Ferrari. Ford versus Ferrari gives us an epic bromance between Matt Damon's Carroll Shelby and Christian Bale's Ken Miles. Matt Damon really gets to like show his acting skills in this movie in a more subtle way. And like the casting is fantastic. Like Carroll Shelby and Ken Miles look like real life versions of Matt Damon and Christian Bale, because obviously those are not what real people look like in any situation. The shots are fantastic. The sound is obviously spectacular, hence Oscar winning. And I do think it is the best film that was released in the 2010s with Matt Damon.
All right. Way to use the question to kill the timer there. Andy, we are going to go to you next. Time starts when you speak.
Alrighty. So I guess I will also start with a pun as well. The movie I picked would be Out of This World, I guess we could say. I went with 2015's The Martian, aka the best comedy or musical Golden Globe winner, which I still don't understand that part. But I just chose this because I feel like it's a movie that really got to let Matt Damon act and show what he can do, and really kind of put a different spin on a sci-fi movie, made it a little bit more realistic, but at the same time made it understandable for you, grounded it a little bit more, unlike some other sci-fi movies. I'm talking about Interstellar, obviously. And I'm going to save the rest for my opening arguments, so I'm just going to concede the rest of my time, actually.
Okay, you know what? Because it's only about 15 seconds, I'm just going to let it roll. Andy, when it gets to 0, you can start speaking. But with that said, what about Death Isn't Funny?
Okay.
Do you guys not get that? So yeah, Jake, I apologize. When it runs to 0, if you didn't need me to pause it, I can, but you can start speaking now.
Did you say me?
Yes.
Alrighty. So, what I will say on the topic of The Martian is that I watched it recently, and gosh, I did not have a great time. I was honestly bored for the first hour and a half. Got exciting towards the end there, but like The Martian has things like, okay, we've got Scene Bean in a scene, Sean Bean that is, so it's like, let's put a Lord of the Rings joke in there. And then, like, let's write an Iron Man thing, too. It's like this movie depends on inner geekdom movies to be funny or good. So, like I said, that Lord of the Rings joke is something I would write. And I shouldn't even be trusted to write movie trivia, let alone movie lines. So, like I said, I was bored. I felt like how Mark Watney felt. Like, when do I get out of this situation here? Let's just have a quick word about shit potatoes. I should be the only shit potato talked about in any matches of the movie variety. They steal the slingshot move from the superior Ben and Matt space movie Armageddon. Absolutely bite that one. They steal the space catch from Final Fantasy VIII. Bunch of BS on that. And there's just too many characters. Donald Glover shows up halfway. He gets nothing. There's not enough Sebastian Stan. There's not enough Michael Pena. And this doesn't even go to mention Jessica Chastain, Kristen Wiig, Jeff Daniels, the aforementioned Sean Bean, Benedict Wong, Chiwetel Ejiofor. I could probably continue on for these 20 seconds, but I will go to something else and say that I'm not a racing guy. I'm not even a huge biopic guy. I am a space guy, but I still enjoyed Ford versus Ferrari much more than The Martian.
All right, and that'll be a wrap up on the second round. Andy, time starts when you begin speaking.
All right, so The Martian. You got Ridley Scott, who's known for doing stuff in space. I mean, he's got Alien. He's got all the other Alien movies. I think he did Prometheus, Covenant, but that's not what this is about. This is about The Martian, which actually, oddly enough, is Ridley Scott's highest grossing movie of all time. It's also up there, I think, for Matt. This movie made $630 million, so I'd say you might have been bored. A lot of other people weren't bored. This movie got 7 Oscar nominations, including a Best Actor for Matt Damon, actually, which he hasn't done since Good Will Hunting, so that's kind of impressive, and he hasn't done it since even for Ford versus Ferrari, which, he was good in that movie, but I feel like Christian Bale stole that movie from him. He's the one who got all the nominations. He didn't get any wins, but he got a lot of nominations. He was alone a lot, so I feel like Matt Damon really got to shine, shows what he can do. He has a very sporadic film history. When you look at it, he'll do one good movie and then a bunch of shit through it, and then he'll do another good movie. Case in point, his last big one before The Martian was True Grit, and they didn't do anything up until about then. And before True Grit, it was the Bourne movies. So I feel like he's never gotten to show that he can act, and so he had a lot of time alone, obviously, so it could be slow, but you were kind of there to feel what it felt like to be alone and helpless, and the people down there being helpless and unable to help him and not know how to help him and get this man home. And I think they did a really good job of showing that, and Matt Damon did a really good job of making you feel his pain or his emotion, his laughing uncontrollably at things that weren't there, obviously. And obviously he was in a space movie the year before in Interstellar, which that was a little far-fetched, and I just liked how this movie was steeped in reality, and they had NASA working with them closely on this movie. So a lot of those things were actual things that could happen. Maybe some of it dramatized a little bit for Hollywood, but I feel like they really got their point across, and Matt Damon's acting helped get that across and made that movie enjoyable.
All right, and that'll be time on it. You guys have 4 minutes of open debate. The time will start when the first person speaks.
Well, I'll be the one to say it. Matt Damon. I feel like in The Martian, he's just Matt Damon doing Matt Damon things. And, Matt Damon's fantastic, so that's fine. But, he actually gets to act in Ford versus Ferrari. He gets to play a different role that he doesn't always show us. Mark Watney and Jason Bourne are pretty similar figures in that they're smart guys who do action-y things, albeit guns and plants are slightly different. Let's see, what else do I got? As far as the 7 nominations that Martian got, it 1-0. There are 2 wins on the realm of Ford versus Ferrari. Like I said, that sound is fantastic and stuff like that.
It's just I love Ford versus Ferrari, but like I said before, I just really feel like, unfortunately, Christian Bale outshined him in that movie. You almost forgot about Matt Damon at points, and you're like, oh yeah, there he is, because he was just kind of off on the sides the whole time. And Matt Damon was really only the big person in The Martian, so he had to carry that whole movie, and I think it did it really well. The box office, I think, showed it. The Rotten Tomatoes showed it's actually his second highest rated, at 91% on Rotten Tomatoes.
And the first highest is
Ford versus Ferrari.
Yep, there we go.
Yep. I think it's just the way it was filmed and his acting and making you feel that really came across, and it was his movie. And like I said, I don't think Ford versus Ferrari was really his movie. It was more Christian Bale's movie. And
I will agree with you and dip my toe into the realm of semantics, but it is the best movie featuring, or at least what it says down there, is the best movie featuring Matt Damon. I think it definitely features Matt Damon, even if it does slightly more feature Bale. And I think it is the better movie that features Matt Damon.
Yeah, and I think you said earlier about Matt Damon being Matt Damon, and I feel like you could almost say that with any actor. I feel like he brought something a little bit different to it. You actually believed that he was an astronaut, and he really did go to space, and all of those terrible things did happen to him. And like I said, I really felt the emotion, and that for me kind of helped carry the movie. I felt like the emotion. I didn't really feel his emotion in Ford versus Ferrari. I know there were stakes, but you didn't feel it at times. It really felt like you felt it in The Martian. You felt like this is life or death right now, and if everyone doesn't come together, he's going to die. And he made you feel that, and the people down on the earth, Donald Glover and everyone else, and the crew trying to save him, you really felt it, and I feel like all of that carried off of his performance.
I didn't really feel that one in The Martian. I saw that they were upset that they left him, but that felt like more generic that it's because they left anyone. Whereas the friendship between Ken Miles and Carol Shelby is much more personal and better acted, I think.
Okay. I don't have much else to really back that up with at this time. Oh, look at that. We got 40 seconds.
Yeah, let me see if I got anything else here.
If you guys would like to acquiesce and move on, that's absolutely fine.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that as well.
All right. All right. Sorry, guys. Eventually, I will actually think to take down the times I need to jump to for this, but we're not there yet because this is still new. All right, we're going to go on to closings. 1 minute on the clock. Andy, or Jake, excuse me, time starts when you speak.
Alrighty. So as I said, I genuinely feel that Ford versus Ferrari is the better film, or Ford v Ferrari, what you want to call it. Just the genuine acting between Matt and Christian is fantastic. Like I said, the sound design, it won the Oscars. It was not just nominated. The casting, fantastic. The scene where Matt Damon takes Henry Ford II out in the car is amazing. It's just like, it just feels like the better movie for me. And also in The Martian, Matt Damon's beard is weird. I cede my time.
All right, we're going to let the 15-second timer count down. Andy, once it rolls to 0, you can start speaking.
Got it.
Also, what an MGK diss that was, Jake.
Yeah.
All right, Andy, when it rolls, you can start speaking.
All right, The Martian, a movie that Matt Damon gets to really show his acting chops. It's almost like his Castaway, if you will, with Tom Hanks. We knew he could act. This movie showed he can really act. Same thing, we knew Matt Damon can act. This movie showed that he can really act. He had a lot alone. Like I said, $630 million against a $108 million budget. I believe it's one of his highest grossing movies of all time, even above Ford versus Ferrari. It was also the 10th highest grossing movie of 2015. It was a movie I think changed science fiction again, something really Scott's used to. It kind of made science fiction a little bit more grounded and something that actually could happen. It was a unique film. It was different in a way. And I will also concede the rest of my time.
All right, well, that one's much easier to solve. Okay, guys, Thank you. A great first round from both of you. Welcome back to the Battleground. I'm going to go ahead and send you both behind the scenes for the moment, as I'm going to bring on our 3 judges. All right, so while you guys take one last second to think about where you want to go with this, I'm going to run down some quick facts here based off what they said. So for starters, Ridley Scott, the man who directed many sci-fi films, as was said, has directed, space films with specific quote, sci-fi films, he's obviously done more. Space films, he has done 4, all of which were named. He did Alien, Prometheus, Alien Covenant, and of course the aforementioned The Martian. When it came to talking about accolades, they were both correct. The Martian received 7 nominations, though it did not win. Ford v Ferrari received 4 nominations. It received Best Picture and 3 technical nominations. It did win 2 of those. When talking about Matt Damon's accolades over the course of his career, he has received 5 Academy Award nominations, 2 for Best Actor in Good Will Hunting and The Martian, 1 for Best Supporting Actor in 2010 for Invictus. He was also nominated as a producer for Manchester by the Sea, and of course he won for Good Will Hunting screenplay in 1998. Also, I don't know what Rotten Tomatoes you guys were reading. The list of films that are rated above both The Martian and Ford v Ferrari include Good Will Hunting, if you count him as a producer, Manchester by the Sea, True Grit, Behind the Candelabra, Saving Private Ryan, then Ford v Ferrari, The Bourne Ultimatum, Ponyo, and The Martian. So not quite the highest ones, but very, very, very close, probably both in his top 10 if I bothered to count. With that said, I'm going to go ahead and go to Jacob up first. As concise as you can hit it, my brother, who do you pick and what sold you?
I'm going to go with Andy on this one. I think just based off the question featuring Matt Damon, he was able to talk more about why Matt Damon really shines in The Martian and really brought down his performance in Ford v Ferrari and how Christian Bale was outshining Matt Damon. And so that kind of won me over. So I'll give my point to Andy.
All right, and then we move on to Mr. Ladam Blanche. As concise as you can hit it. Who sold you and who gets the point?
I'm in agreement with Jacob. I'm going with Andy too. Jake, I don't know where Jake was going. He lists all the people in Martian, like the other cast of characters saying, oh, they weren't in it enough. But the question was about Matt Damon. And the only thing Andy missed was that The Martian was written by Andy Weir, so he could have threw that in there since his name is Andy. But other than that, they both started off strong first round, but I give it to Andy.
All right. The novel was written by Andy Weir. That's just a fun fact, guys. Thank you so much. Kevin, we're glad your internet held up. I'm sorry we couldn't use it this time around. I promise you'll speak next time. But we'll go ahead and send you guys to the back. Thank you for being here as we bring back on our competitors and get on to question number 2. And speaking of famous guys who are probably friends with each other and have definitely worked together at some point in their career, the second question is, what is Leonardo DiCaprio's worst performance of his career? He's a man who has been accoladed many times throughout the years. He has achieved 5 Academy nominations over both acting and supporting acting. He finally won in 2016 for The Revenant. After a number of performances, people probably would have argued he should have won beforehand, and a couple that weren't nominated, I'm sure people could argue for. Specifically 06, great year for him. Nominated for Blood Diamond, you probably could have done it for The Departed too. But we're going to talk about the shit, like the 4 films he has that aren't really good. We're going to talk about his performances in those films, and again, the emphasis is on the performance. That is what the question is asking for. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and bring up our timer. Andy, you are up first on this one. Time starts when you begin speaking.
All right, so we're going to notice a little bit of a trend. I did another Ridley Scott movie, and I chose Body of Lies. And this is a movie I feel like has a lot of problems, but one of them is just Leo's performance. And I feel like, at this point he's established. He had already done The Departed. He'd already done Blood Diamond. And then for some odd reason, he decided to do this movie, pairing him with Russell Crowe. And it just has a lot of problems. And I'm going to save all of those for my argument for right now. So I'm just going to establish that's the movie and stop right there.
Okay. All right. Jumping ahead. All right. Jake, I'll pause it if you need me to, but time starts when the clock rolls.
Alrighty, so I went with The Quick and the Dead here. It is a young Leo, but it's sandwiched between fantastic movies like What's Eating Gilbert Grape and Basketball Diaries, and Romeo and Juliet and Titanic. So we know he can act better than he does in this movie. His accent in The Quick and the Dead is cartoonish. His death scene is unconvincing. He's overshadowed by Sharon Stone, Russell Crowe, Gene Hackman, even the little girl who plays young Sharon Stone outacts Leo in this one. And I will touch just briefly on Body of Lies, because like you mentioned Russell Crowe. In Body of Lies, he acts equal to Russell Crowe. And in this movie, he does not.
All right, so as time wraps up on round number 1, the common theme we are seeing here is Russell Crowe ruins Leonardo DiCaprio. Print it, quote me on it, but don't use my name. Andy, time starts when you begin speaking.
Okay, so this movie, at this point, like I said, Leo's established himself. He should be able to pick any role he wants, any script he wants, and he decides to choose this one, which just came across as a very long episode of Homeland or Law and Order SVU with just very formulaic laying out of the movie, with Leo doing his best to read a script that was just very pulled from other movies, and they said, here, read it, do the best you can with it. And I think you can even see, he's acting, and he's acting well as best he can with the script he's given. And it just seems like he's uninterested in it, and maybe he just kind of signed on because it was Ridley Scott and it was Russell Crowe, and the year before they had done American Gangster, Ridley Scott, Russell Crowe, and Denzel Washington. So maybe they were just trying to repeat that formula again, but it just didn't work. He makes lots of decisions that don't make sense. You don't even believe his decisions half the time. I think he's just doing them because the script probably said you need to be a rogue CIA operative, which he is, and he finds a a terrorist cell, and he takes him in, and Russell Crowe tells him not to do it, but he decides to do it anyway. And then all hell ensues after that based on his one decision. He falls in love with a girl who is also bad that double crosses him. So there's just lots of, the character has no motivation. I don't understand the motivation. His decisions don't make sense. And you can see it on his face sometimes as he's doing it, even on Russell Crowe's face sometimes. I think they both kind of just checked out, and it felt like it was a paycheck movie. So I'm going to just concede the rest of my time.
All right. Go ahead and bring it up. All right, Jake. I'll pause it if you need me to, but if you want to speak when it rolls, that's fine.
I am Goodski. You just said yourself, he's acting well. That's the opposite of what this question is. It is not the worst performance of his career if he's acting well in it, because he is not acting well in The Quick and the Dead. The things you are describing are writing problems. His motivation is, that's not on Leo to decide. So that one's not on Leo at all. On the top, I will briefly talk about the films as a whole. Body of Lies is not so bad that it doesn't even have a list of YouTube movie clips, whereas apparently The Quick and the Dead is that bad where it does not have that list of YouTube movie clips. But yeah, like you said, Leo's acting is solid. It's not fantastic. It's not top-notch Leo in Body of Lies, but it's good. And at this point in Leo's career, he's not going to act as bad as he mistakenly did as a kid in The Quick and the Dead. So like I said, when Leo pulls solid, not great acting in it, when he's acting like he has to be from Baghdad, his Baghdadi acting is, I'm sure that's a correct word, it's mediocre, but it's like mediocre because he's a character playing a character, like some form of Inception, if you will. Body of Lies performance was critically praised by Roger Ebert and other critics, as was the film in general. The only critiques that most people have were the ones you mentioned. It's too generic spy, too many spy film cliches. But the only person anyone I could find say was better than Leo in that movie was Mark Strong. But everyone seems to critically praise Leo in that movie.
All right, apologies there for the late pull-up on the timer. With that, we are on to the open debate round. The time will start when the first person speaks.
So you said universally a lot of people liked it, but its Rotten Tomato score was actually 55%. So pretty terrible. And I said he acted well with what he had, but I still feel like, Quick and the Dead, he wasn't that established yet. So he's a young kid at that point. You probably don't expect you're going to get what you get. But at this point, like I said, he had done Departed. He had done Blood Diamond. Even after he did Revolutionary Road, he did Shutter Island. So we know he can do well. And then for some odd reason, just in my mind, he's got red in his ledger, and that would be Body of Lies. I just, like I said, I didn't buy his performance. I didn't feel, I think part of acting is you want to feel the character's emotions, their motivation, why they're doing it. I just didn't feel any of that from him. And I think part of it too was maybe the way the movie was cut. It was cut in it felt almost like Tony Scott instead of Ridley Scott. It was just very quick cuts, lots of action scenes. And then, we'll throw in some Leo yelling, and then maybe Russell Crowe yelling on the phone. And it just jumped around a lot. And I think that affected the performance and just didn't buy it. And it made $118 million off a $70 million budget. So I think everyone else even kind of didn't buy it. It barely made any money, if any, at all.
Yeah. So jump cutting, again, not Leo's fault. It has nothing to do with the performance of Leo DiCaprio. When we actually look at his performance, it's solid. The torture scene is fantastic. It's a much better screaming F-word scene than we see in The Martian, as aforementioned. But yeah, I just think Leo's acting in this movie is good. It's not great, but it is way better than his performance in Body of Lies is much better than his performance in The Quick and the Dead. By measurement against other actors, by just measurement against itself. And it's not, and you cannot blame a young Leo because, like I said, he was fantastic in What's Eating Gilbert Grape and Basketball Diaries.
Yeah, but I feel like all those things did affect the performance, and it's not his fault, obviously, but it did affect the performance, and I think it ruined the performance a little bit. Like I said, even when you look at everything that's bookend on both sides of those performances, and even after Shutter Island, then he did Inception, and we know what happened after that. Then he just went on a string, and he's still going on that string of solid performances. There's no denying his performances, but I feel like Body of Lies was a little bit of a trip up there. And like I said, obviously, he had maybe Titanic, but even Titanic was 2 years after Quick and the Dead. That's a lot of time. And I don't know what came before The Quick and the Dead, but he's not established at this point. So actors that young, they can have good movies, they can have bad movies. So they have no preconceived things of what you expect for them. But at this point, Leo had just come off, Departed, Blood Diamond. Those were two movies that got a lot of awards, a lot of attention, and Body of Lies just kind of fizzled out. And I think it was just that those performances, the writing, everything about it just kind of affected that. And it wasn't top-notch Leo, which we've come to expect, which is why I think I labeled as one of his worst performances. Because at this point, we've all right, Leo's movies are always on fire. He's always good. And I just feel like this one dropped the ball.
Hey, it's that time again. Yes. So you said you don't know what's before, but I just said What's Eating Gilbert Grape and Basketball Diaries.
But how much time was in between them,
Basketball Diaries was also 95, and What's Eating Gilbert Grape, I believe, was 93. We'll have our fact checkers come in on that. But yes, ultimately, I think the problems you're pulling are not Leo's fault, whereas the problems I am illustrating are Leo's poor accent and the fact that he is overshadowed by most of the other cast.
And time. All right, guys, we have 1 minute to close this match out. The time will start when you begin speaking. Andy.
All right. Body of Lies, like I've established. I think all of the problems with the movie are what actually ruined Leo's performance. And so that's why it's his worst performance. Just didn't buy the acting, the decisions, the cutting, everything about it. And that's pretty much all I have, actually, for my closing arguments.
All right, that's fine. We'll go ahead and cut it ahead. All right, when the time rolls, Jake, you can start speaking, okay? And to fill 10 seconds of dead air, you can bet your bottom dollar I already looked that stuff up.
Oh, yeah.
All right, Jake, when it rolls, you can speak.
Alrighty, so I'll go over my highlights again. Quick and the Dead, young Leo, but that's not an excuse. He showed great performances that year earlier and a couple years previous. So we know he can act better than he could act better at that time than he did. The accent is, like I said, cartoonish. It's better in the accents he has to do are better in Body of Lies. Like I said, death scene unconvincing, and genuinely, the little girl that plays young Sharon Stone has a more convincing scene than Leo does in this movie. Excuse me. Like I said, he is outacted by Russell Crowe and the cast. But in Quick and the Dead, in Body of Lies, he is equal to Crowe and the rest of the cast, perhaps excepting Mark Strong.
All right, that is going to be time on round 2. Another great debate, guys. I'm going to go ahead and send you both to the back and bring in my judges. Unfortunately, in the intermediacy, Kevin's internet did crap out on him, so we have lost him for the moment. If we are lucky enough to get him back, hopefully before the match is over. But until then, I will serve as the third judge should we need it. But with that said, Haven, you are up first this time. As concise as you can hit it for me. Who sold you on getting the point?
This time I'm actually going to go with Jake. He kept bringing up the views that he was that Leo was outperformed by all the movie. The accent, the unbelievable death sequence, Then he brought up strong parts of that Body of Lies. That Leo was already an established actor. And that wasn't that much of a bomb. So I'm gonna go with Jake this time.
All right, and Jacob.
Yeah, I'm also gonna go with Jake. I think he did more praising for the Body of Lies than Andy was able to do for the Quick and the Dead, and I think that's where Jake got him.
All right. Thank you both, gentlemen. I will see you again in just a little bit as I go ahead and bring back in our competitors, and we are at a 1-1 draw. So to answer both of your questions, it's kind of incredible how both of these movies fell in very similar positions to answer the question you all wanted to know. So yes, both of these films came 2 years after an Academy nomination. Obviously, in '93, he was nominated for What's Eating Gilbert Grape. They also came out the same year as films in which his performance was better reviewed. In '95 for The Quick and the Dead, The Basketball Diaries and Total Eclipse came out the same year. For Body of Lies, his previous film was in '06, which was Blood Diamond, which actually was released after The Departed in the same year. And this movie came out the same year as Revolutionary Road, which is a film that, though the movie itself wasn't wholly reviewed the best, his performance is one of the things that was highlighted. So rather interesting how those two really do mirror each other. It was a good fight. We are on to question number 3. Which is, all of this talk of later this year, we're getting this Rocky 4 super cut. I don't know what it is. So I don't know. Maybe I had Rocky on the brain for somebody. The question is, what is the most overrated film in the Rocky Creed series? I think a lot of people give a lot of these films some praise. We're going to talk about some ones that might not deserve as much praise as you believe, at least according to our competitors. So as I go ahead and bring up your timer, Jake, excuse me, we are back to starting with you. A minute will start when you begin speaking.
Alrighty. So I will start by saying that Creed is a good retelling of the original Rocky story. Henceforth, that is not the movie I picked. However, Creed 2 is a weird amalgamation of Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, and Rocky 5. And the scenes that they try to hit in Creed 2 they're good in the original movies because they have the correct layer of cheese, whereas Creed 2 just kind of takes itself too seriously, I feel. So, from Rocky 2, we have the proposal. Donnie's proposal is fine. It's heartfelt. But Rocky proposing is better. It's like, hey, I was wondering if you wouldn't mind marrying me too much. Like, hey, Mr. Doug, you want to come to our wedding? Rocky 5, it fails to emulate the scumbag promoter. And I will go on later with what it fails to do from those other movies.
All right, and that will be time. Andy, over to you when you speak.
All right. It's funny that you should mention the director's cut or whatever they're calling it of Rocky 4, because that is actually the movie I have chosen. The one that's so revered by so many people. I myself actually used to like it, and I hadn't watched it in probably about 10 years, and I just watched it again. And woof. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. The giant 90-minute music video, which we will talk all about that once we get to it. I'm going to save all of the fun little stuff, but I chose Rocky 4. This is when, Rocky, the first 3 were so loved, and then this happened. And I think we all kind of know what happened after. Rocky had some stumbles. And so I think this is the movie that started all of it and kind of the catalyst for everything that happened before they eventually started to rebuild it with the mentioned Creed series now that we're calling. And I am just going to concede the rest of my time.
All right, we're going to let the 10 seconds roll. Jake, you can speak when the clock turns. So that's the battle. Creed 2 versus Rocky 4. Jake, you are up.
All right. When I first read your response, I was genuinely worried that you had read underrated instead of overrated, because Rocky 4 is the most underrated Rocky movie by a long shot. Like, it's, oh, holy bejesus. Rocky 4 has Rocky's hardest fight. He never fully recovers from it. It is the most significant fight of his whole career. Maybe you could make an exception for the first Apollo fight for starting the franchise. But yeah, even in Rocky 5, bitch-ass sucker punching Tommy hits him, he's still thinking of Drago. That fight is magical. And you bring up the music video aspect. That's awesome too. That's the heart of the franchise. Like Rocky is a montage. It's awesome. So let's go to rating since we are talking about rated. Creed 2, 83% tomato meter, 79% audience. I'm sure you have these numbers too in front of you. 66 on Metacritic and 7.1 on IMDb. Rocky 4, 40% on tomato meter, 75% audience, 40 on Metacritic. There are people, and 6.9 on IMDb. So the lowest Metacritic aggregate, and that's the lowest in Metacritic on the franchise. So there are multiple people out there that think legitimately that Rocky 5 is better than Rocky 4. And that's an absolutely disgusting, ridiculous notion. The people who love Rocky 4 are a vocal minority, and they love it just as they should. However, if I find my notes, but the majority of people who are actually rating the film vastly underrate it, so I cannot justly call Rocky 4 overrated. I think it's underrated, whereas Creed 2 is nah.
And time. All right, Andy, 2 minutes on the clock when you speak.
All right, so Rocky 4, like I said, just, you go in expecting to see a fight movie, and then you end up seeing, so this is a 90-minute movie. 24 minutes and 20 seconds of that movie is music montage. That is just ridiculous for a movie. Almost a quarter of that movie is spent of you just watching him prepare for this fight, which is very cartoonish. And I think that was kind of the problem with it too, is Rocky had kind of established these somewhat real fights until 3 with Mr. T. And then it just became very cartoonish and over the top. And I feel like with Creed, what they've done is made it more grounded in reality, and you feel the emotion behind it. You have emotional connection to these characters now. And I think they were trying to go for that in 4, but I feel like part of it was they rushed the killing of Apollo. I feel like that should have been stretched out a little bit more, as opposed to, I'm guessing he dies in the first, if it's a 90-minute movie, he probably dies in the first 10 minutes, which just seemed very quick to me. Whereas to Creed 2, it's the whole building up of he lost, and then he built up for that rematch, and you felt it and you understood it, and you were like, all right, here we go. And you were behind him. And, Rocky 4, like I said, I felt like they rushed it. It was just very rushed. It was okay. It was also very formulaic of all the other Rocky movies. You knew the beats that were going to happen. You knew he was going to win at the end, even if it was at the very last second. And I just feel like, at that point, Rocky needed to do something different. You're 4 movies in. You need to do something different. And they just went with their bread and butter. And then you can tell that they were having issues because then Rocky 5 came along, and that one's even worse than 4, I think. I mean, I think 4 and 5 are at the bottom of the barrel. But this is overrated, and I'm saying overrated because everyone loves Rocky 4, and I just don't understand it because it's almost a half hour of almost a third of that movie is a music montage. I'm going to stop right there.
All right, I'm going to let the clock roll out for about the last 10 seconds. When it resets, the first person can speak in the 4 minutes. All right, gentlemen, best of luck in the open debate.
So I'm glad you brought up the building up for the rematch, because that's what it fails to emulate from Rocky 3. Because, yeah, Donnie got beat by Victor, not beat, what have you. Technically, he retained the belt, but he got the crap kicked out of him, metaphors and whatnot. But he didn't, it's not like Victor Drago killed Rocky, whereas Clubber did kill Mickey, so the build up to the rematch is not as climactic as in Rocky 3. And in a weird way, I also feel like Victor Drago feels more like a Clubber Lang figure than an Ivan Drago figure. Like just his build, the way he smashes, whereas Ivan's a bit more of a technical boxer, even though whatever he hits, he destroys, of course. We all know that. because Rocky 4 is awesome. And Creed 2 is fine, but like Creed 2 seems to generally be rated as the third best Rocky movie. And if I were to speak my genuine heart, I think Rocky 4 is the third best Rocky movie. And people out there are ranking it as the worst or the second worst, and that's ridiculous.
And I would say even the critics agree with that, because that year, Rocky 4 won 5 Razzies. It won for Worst Actor, Worst Director, Worst Supporting Actress, Worst New Star for Bridget Nielsen. She won twice. And oddly enough, Worst Musical Score for that 30-minute music montage, or 24-minute, 20 seconds. So I would say, and even at one point it was voted the 8th worst movie to have a delusional misrepresentation of Russia in 2020 by a magazine.
Yeah, that means it's super underrated.
No, it's super overrated. It's just so it was, it's terrible. I mean, it won 5 Razzies even. So I don't know why everyone loves it when it's that bad. Is this like it's
the
so
thing
bad?
Is, everyone doesn't love it. 40% of people love it. Or 40 to 75% of people love it.
So 75% of the fans love it, but they shouldn't. So that should also be at 40. So that's what I'm saying. It's overrated. It shouldn't be that loved by the fans. This is a terrible movie. People paid a lot of money to see a 30-minute music video and then some fighting behind it with not a lot of emotion. Whereas Creed 2, like I said, Donnie lost. They built up to him getting the fighting chance to have his rematch again, and everything else that was going on in his life. So you felt that. I understand it. I thought it was done really well. They pulled certain bits from the Rocky lore, but made it its own movie. Whereas opposed to Rocky 4 was just the same beats from the last 3 movies. Rocky or someone in his life dies, and this one obviously dies or gets beat up, or he has to build himself up again to beat the unbeatable, and then he beats the unbeatable at the last second.
But by that virtue, technically even Donnie suffers from the death in Rocky 4, and like that's the predication, for the whole movie. And so just from a little bit of personal experience, I love the franchise forever. I never thought I'd get to see one in theaters. It was awesome to go see Balboa, and then Balboa's Balboa, which I think is actually a fine movie. We'll discuss that later. But then Creed happened, and I was a little older, a little more into my film knowledge and stuff. So going to see that was awesome, and Creed was awesome. So I was super stoked for Creed 2. But then I went in and I was just let down a bit by some of the things that happened in that movie and the way it kind of mishmashed 2 through 5 into the, like, I wish they didn't mishmash all 4 Rocky sequels into Creed 2.
Yeah, I just feel like Rocky 4, they had the trust of the fans. They had a chance to try something different, and I feel like they just went with the safe bet and just made a rehash of all the other movies, and it just was uninteresting. And like I said, 5 Razzies.
And that is time.
Oh, okay.
All right, we go to the 1-minute closing. Jake, you're up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So you did a good job of why you think Rocky 4 is bad, but I don't think that really helps with the argument that it's overrated. There is, like I said, it's just some people rank it as the worst, whereas I genuinely think it's the third best, if I'm being honest. Like, if I'm being braggadocious, I would argue for it being the best Rocky movie, but I will cede that for another day. But yes, the movie, I just think Creed 2 should not be recognized generally as the third best movie in the franchise. Like I said, fails to emulate a lot of the things it does that is similar to the rest of the to Rocky 2 through 5. And it is disgustingly underrated on the IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes.
And that is going to be time. Andy, 1 minute on the clock. Time starts when you speak.
All right. I think the difference between the two is Creed 2 tried to take some bits of the Rocky lore and make it its own. So I appreciate that. Whereas, there's this love for Rocky 4 of it being a great movie. In your mind, the third greatest. The fans say 75%. I would almost have to agree with the critics in here is that it's, the acting is just terrible. Everyone's just kind of phoning it in. It's the fourth Rocky movie. I think they're just hoping that people will come to see it on name alone, which is what happened. And when you actually watch that movie, there's not a lot of substance. There's not a lot of story. There's not a lot of emotion, which is what I like about the Rocky. I like all of the emotion and the storytelling and the acting of it. And there wasn't a lot of that. It was, good punch to that. A good portion of that was taken up by musical working out montage scene, and then we get to the fight, and then the movie's over, and you kind of already know how the movie's going to end. At least with Creed 2, they built it up in a way where you wanted to go see that movie, and I really think that's a good movie actually too. I would flip them for me. I would put that as the third one for myself, and I just don't understand the love for Rocky for the music video.
And that is time. All right, guys. Very passionate round. It's clear that you guys both enjoy the other person's movie at the very least. So I will go ahead and send you both to the back and bring forth our judges. Before we go ahead and get to the deliberations, some quick cleanup for those curious to throwing around a lot of numbers. I always just go with Rotten Tomatoes. It's the easiest aggregate of a score. Creed 2 does have an 83% critic like rating, a 79% critic like rating. Rocky 4 has a 40% critic like rating, but a 74% audience rating, so it is highly preferred by the audience. Rocky 5, as was mentioned, the statement that some people might like it more than Rocky 4. Well, if you're using law of averages, that is incorrect. It has a 30% critic rating and a 31% audience-like rating, meaning basically if the three of us are on screen here, one of us might like it. That's what the statistical odds say, and I know it's not me. If you look at the Rocky franchise as a whole, as was said, Creed 2, according to Rotten Tomatoes like ratings, is considered the third best film in order from worst to best. It is Rocky 5, Rocky 4, Rocky 3, Rocky 2, Rocky Balboa, Creed 2, Rocky, and surprisingly, Creed is actually the highest liked film on Rotten Tomatoes. And a lot was brought up about time in Rocky 4, so I actually did find some specific answers. Unfortunately, I could not get an exact timestamp on it, but I do know that Apollo Creed does die in the ring around the 30-minute mark. I was able to find that the James Brown dance sequence before he gets in the ring ends at 26:05, so just within a couple of minutes after that, Apollo Creed is thumped to the ground. In terms of montage time, Rocky 4 is 91 minutes and 20 seconds long. The total montage time of the film is 29 minutes and 10 seconds, meaning 31.9% of the film is actually montage. It's incredible. But with that said, that is not what matters here. So, Jacob, I turn to you, sir. Out of the arguments, who sold you? As concise as you can put it.
Man, I still don't know. This was a tough round.
I can come back if you need a sec.
Yes, please.
All right, I'll turn to Haven then. Haven, who does your point go to?
All right, I'm going to start off by saying that's the good thing about being here is that the judges don't know the questions because both these guys disrespect the shit out of my favorite franchise. You know what? There's a lot of great stuff in both of these movies, but at the end of the day, I'm going to give it to Andy. He kept saying a couple things. He never mentioned the greatest speech that the first greatest speech Rocky had until Rocky Balboa. He never mentioned the look that Rocky had in his eyes after Creed was dead in his arms, that captured a nation. We all, wanted to look like that when we wanted revenge. But other than that, Jake, I think Jake just relied too much on numbers. I think that's happened a lot in matches. I don't understand why they keep bringing up the numbers. It's about you and the other guy. But, yeah, I'm going to go with Andy. He kept sticking to his points, so I'm going to give it to him, even though they disrespected my franchise.
All right. Well, I guess we're paying for Haven's emotional support bill tonight, not our competitors. Jacob, I go back to you now. Do you have a decision?
Yeah, I think I am going to go with Jake. I think he just brought up the fact that Creed was trying to do so much from the previous movies, and that kind of brought it down, even though I do love Creed 2. He sold me with that. I think, yeah, so I'll go with Jake by this much.
All right, so it is a 1-to-1 split on votes, which means it goes to the tiebreaker, which is myself in this case. And yeah, I will give the competitors a lot of credit. This was a very, very close round, as have all of them been, might I say. You guys have been both doing a fine job tonight. But my point does go to Andy. Simply to put it, I think Jake spent more of his time attempting to defend Rocky 4 than he did take down Creed 2. And I just thought that Andy had a comeback for everything he said. And so in that moment, the takedown of the film on Andy's part was better because he was kind of being propositioned in that direction. I don't think there was as harsh takedowns on Creed 2. But with that said, again, very, very close, fine margins in the split. Judges, I thank you as we send you to the back. And the score is 2-1. Right now, Andy has the lead, but anything can happen.
Good round, man. Good round.
That was, whew. And to be fair to Haven, I actually do love the Rocky series. That was very tough. It's very tough.
Of course, me too. We all love Rocky.
Yeah. Let's be clear. Let's put the cards on the table. That was selected as a strength by one of their competitors. It's not their fault that I picked a negative question. With that said, you're welcome, buddy. Question number 4. Is going to be focusing on a studio that even this year has had a couple of really weird and interesting films come out. That's all they kind of do is just make weird, interesting shit. And by shit, I mean good films, because most of their movies are actually good, not bad. The question is, what is the most unique film made or distributed by A24? I combined it together because with a small studio like this, the margins are so fine between what's produced and what's distributed that I just put it all together. If it has A24 in front of it, it counts. What is the most unique film that they have made on this front? I am going to begin with Andy, as time will start when you begin speaking, good sir.
All right, so this was tough, as you said, because they have a lot of movies, and a lot of them I haven't even seen. In fact, the one I chose I haven't even seen, which is kind of why I like this show. I got to watch it for the first time. So I chose Spring Breakers, which is actually their first movie, and that's kind of the reason I chose it. When you look at their catalog of movies, they do things that are different outside the box, and I feel like this one was unique and different, that it wasn't that much outside the box. So that's kind of why I chose it. I tried to put this question on its head a little bit. It's generic in a sense in that it's a crime drama, but then they kind of flipped it on its head a little bit, and you're basically with bad people the whole time. There's nothing redeeming about any of the people in the movie, really. And it's different in that the place where it takes place is Spring Breakers. The villain is not really much of a villain, as he's just kind of a dick and a despicable guy. And James Franco playing a guy called Alien, who is apparently based on someone real. And this was the guy who actually co-founded, one of the co-founders of A24. He directed this, and this was their first movie, and that's all I've got for now.
That is time. Jake, over to you. 1 minute on the clock when you speak.
The question we have here is most unique film. Unique, being the only one of its kind, unlike anything else, distinctive, individual, special, idiosyncratic, quirky. I can think of one singular film in which a man turns another man into a walrus. I repeat that just in case anyone did not hear that. A man turns another man into a walrus. It is the only one of its kind, unlike anything else, distinctive, individual, etc. The movie I chose for this question is Tusk. I will cede the final 15, 14, 13 seconds.
Understood. All right, Andy, the time is going to roll over. You can speak when the clock turns. Is it Spring Breakers versus Tusk?
All right. This is a unique fight. I guess we've got a bunch of drug addicts versus some walruses. I think kind of what made this movie unique is different is you took a lot of clean-cut, cookie-cutter people and put them in a movie and in a situation you would normally not see them in. I mean, you had Vanessa Hudgens, you had Selena Gomez, and you had James Franco, who at this point in their career, I think 2 of them were known for Disney Channel stuff, and James Franco's James Franco. So for him, I guess this is probably just another day in the life of him. They probably just had a camera follow him around. But, I think it was just very, it was done as a message, I think, into consumerism and kids like everything cool and flashy and how that can go so wrong. And they took it in a way to make it a crime drama of these girls who just want to have a good spring break, and they go down and some bad things happen and they get pulled into this life of crime and doing whatever the hell they want, and you just kind of see it play out over the movie. And the way it's filmed is, you feel all their decisions, you feel like you're there. They filmed it and cut it in a way where you really just, it resonates with you in a certain sort of way. And I just like that, just because it was so much different than everything else they've done, because they're kind of known, for art house, really serious dramas, and those horror movies, obviously, which I guess in a way Tusk could be a horror movie, although you're turning a guy into a walrus. So I don't know what you classify that as, and I will just concede the rest of my time.
All right, no problem. Go ahead and jump forward just a little bit. Let me pause that for you. I'll give you a few seconds before I hit it again. Time starts when you speak.
Sure, sounds good. So you mentioned that it's unique, but then you also said it's a generic thing, and there are bad people and drug addicts, and like there's turning good girls bad. There are millions. I mean, there are dozens. There are multiple movies in which bad girls Disney Channel people turn good, or good Disney Channel girls, what have you, turn bad. And then there's like a bunch of movies with the message about consumerism. How many movies are about spring break? All right. Spring Break, Spring Breakers, Spring Breakdown, Revenge of the Nerds 2, Nerds in Paradise, From Justin to Kelly, The Beach Girls, Where the Boys Are, The Real Cancun. How many movies are there about a dude getting turned into a walrus? The answer is 1. I am almost certain. I did try to find one, could not. There is a Time article on the 10 best spring break movies on Netflix to stream right now. Spring Breakers, by the way, 10th on that list. Conversely, there is not a Time article on 10 best guy turns guy into a walrus movies on Netflix to stream right now. I'm going to give the walrus thing a brief break to point out that there are fantastic performances in Tusk by Michael Park, Justin Long, and Guy Lapointe, who is, of course, Johnny Depp. It's a delight. And then also, so the point of Tusk is a guy turns a guy into a walrus, and then so you spend the whole time wanting the walrus to kill the guy that turned him into a walrus, but when he gets that kill, you don't get the satisfaction of it because he is given into the walrus. So Spring Breakers is about teens on spring break, which happens all the time. Crime happens all the time in those movies. Tusk is definitely the more unique film.
All right, we'll go on to the open debate round. The time will start when the first person speaks.
Just in case you guys didn't hear me say it, a guy turns another guy into a walrus.
Yeah, I know you were saying lots of spring break movies, and I don't know if I've ever seen a spring break movie like this. I mean, this is a pretty graphic movie. Definitely a little bit eye-opening. Like I said, it wasn't so much that it was good people doing bad things. It was the fact that you had never seen those actors in that light. So it made it unique for me, I guess. And like I said, when, obviously A24 does unique movies. I feel like a movie about a guy turning in a walrus for that studio wouldn't be that unique. And I feel like this was almost unique because it was so generic for them when you look at their resume of movies. And maybe I just looked at it wrong, but that's kind of how I feel about that movie. And the fact that it was actually their most successful movie until Ex Machina too. I know that doesn't have anything to do with that. I just thought that was kind of funny that was their most successful movie. It was 31 million up until 2 years later when Ex Machina came out, which is a whole nother debate for another time.
I understand. Let me see what else I got to say other than the walrus situation. Hashtag walrus yes, everybody.
If you guys have felt the point where you would like to move on, as long as both agree, I am okay with that.
I just want to say a guy turns another guy into a walrus one last time, then I'm good.
I'm
All
good
right,
as well.
Andy, are you acquiescing?
Yeah, I will.
Okay. All right. All right, when the clock rolls, Andy, back to you for 1 minute closing. All right, sir?
All right, got it.
And with that, you guys go into the record books for the quickest round ever. Time starts for you, Andy.
All right. James Franco in his everyday life. That's what this movie's about. Cameras following him around. It's a very unique experience. You could see what he does in his off time. That's what this movie was. I think we can all agree on that. It was just following James Franco around. Very unique. A different take on something that's been done over and over for a studio that has lots of unique movies, like turning a man into a walrus. And that's all I've got.
All right, no problem. Acquiescing time. We'll go ahead and jump that timer forward. Jake, same thing to you. You got 10 seconds to think. The time starts for you when it rolls over, sir. As we get on to the potential final 30 minute of regulation debate. Go ahead, sir.
So yeah, you just said the words done over and over, and that's the opposite of what unique is. So I will just once again say a man turns another man into a walrus.
And I think that means we are done, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Certainly the most interesting approach to a round I have ever seen. All right. I'm going to send both of you guys to the back, and we're going to go ahead and bring on our judges. There wasn't much to fact check, so the only thing that I can bring up is so to differentiate Spring Breakers, which was directed by Harmony Korine. For those who don't know that name, everyone remembers that horrifying fucking movie from the 90s, Kids. Yeah, that guy made this. So this was the first movie that was completely that was like produced with A24's involvement. However, it was not the first film that they actually released. Earlier that same year, they released a film called A Glimpse Inside the Mind of Charlie Swan III. It starred the likes of Charlie Sheen, Jason Schwartzman, Bill Murray, Patricia Arquette, Aubrey Plaza, Mary Elizabeth Winstead. The reason I'm still reading is to make up the point that it's fucking horrendous. It's apparently just god-awful. So needless to say, there's a reason Spring Breakers did better. With that said, Haven, I go to you first. Who sold you on getting the point, and what sold you?
Andy's getting the point. The simple fact is because he didn't say a guy turns to another guy to a walrus 50 fucking times. So Andy gets the point.
All right, Jacob, I head over to you. Who gets your vote, and what sold you?
Jake gets the point. He talked about a movie that was more unique. I think Andy kind of shot himself in the foot with This Has Been Before, whereas Jake's hasn't. And that's kind of what unique means, and Jake brought that up.
All right, which means the tiebreaker does come down to myself. And again, based on the argument of it, I actually do have to give the point to Andy. I do realize that, obviously, as was said, he talked about the fact that a film like that had been done before, but in that he was able to explain further why this film separates itself from ones that have been done before, and it is done in a unique style compared to those other films. Whereas, as blatantly unique as a man turns a man into another walrus is, there just wasn't a lot of meat to back the argument up for myself, unfortunately. And so I do give the point to Andy. And so, judges, I do thank you for your time with us as I send you to the back, because your winner by a score of 3-1, it is Andy Sweet taking home the victory.
Oh.
In what was a close match, very close on a couple of those rounds. It's just the little things that get you over the edge there. And obviously, I think there's going to be 2 rounds on this. I think a lot of people will look at a lot of different ways. Obviously, that last round was just one of the most interesting things I've ever seen happen. And that Rocky round was a fight for the ages. But you are the victor tonight, as deemed by our panel. How are you feeling, Andy?
It feels good. It was close. I thought he had me on that Tusk question. With Spring Breakers, like I said in my defense, I kind of want to do something different. You said unique, so I was thinking different, and I was looking at all their movies, and I was like, well, this one's different in that it's generic, and I always feel like A24 likes to think outside the box. And so I just spitballed. I was like, I'd Hail Mary here. I'll see what happens. If I lose the point, then hey, we'll go to that sudden death round, the blind round, and we'll see what happens. But it shot for the stars, and it worked. I thought I was done though. Tusk is very unique, so I thought he had me in that one, and I just stuck to my guns and my points the best I could. I figured that would be the only thing, if anything, that would carry me through, was just stick to my notes, stick to my points, and that's what helped me in the end run, in the long game, I think. So
absolutely. And of course, because this is a tournament, that means if you win, you get to play again, but sooner.
Right.
I'm never going to tell anyone they can't play again. It's just somebody gets to play sooner. And so,
Okay.
Andy, you are, again, with both tournaments, with this being the first match, you are the first person to move into the quarterfinals of the 0-1
Nice.
bracket. And you will be playing the winner of either JD Domash or Matt Beer. So what are your thoughts on both of those competitors, if you had a chance to check out their matches or what you know about them personally, and who would you prefer to see in that match?
I haven't seen any of their matches yet. I know Matt is from the After Dark crew and all of that. So, I've seen him around. So I'll just need to, get prepared, watch some matches, watch some movies. That was kind of the little change up I had in my studying this time, was that I actually watched some of the movies. Last time it was my first time, so it was just going off of my base knowledge and studying. But I think it definitely helps if you watch one or two of your movies to kind of help solidify your arguments.
It has helped from time to time.
Yeah, it helped. Like I said, I'd never seen Spring Breakers. It was one I wanted to see. So, hey, I knocked one off my list. And, if anything, I'll just be prepared no matter what and just do my best and watch their matches.
Absolutely, man. Well, I'm happy to have you back after what was a tough night tonight and after what was a tough game last time. I am glad to have you see your first win, and I wish you the best of luck in the next round.
Yep.
We'll see you then, good sir.
Yep, see you.
All right, as we bring on his competitor, Mr. Jake Riese, and I have to say, sir, there's a reason, if it can come to it, I don't like judging, because I do not like having to hand somebody the loss, especially yourself, sir. And I do want to take a minute to heavily compliment you. Andy definitely, and I should have said this while he was here, so here, I'll be nice. Here we go. Andy definitely improved from the last time, as he said, but he had a great foundation coming into it. All right, now you can disappear. Jake, I think on screen, the match against Joe was a little bit rougher, but behind the scenes, you got that boost of confidence from the people trying to instill it into you and show you that you had a pathway. And every time I talked to you, it was, I think I can improve this. I think I have the, I can get better at this. I think the exact quote was, I watched back my match again and I saw where I fucked up, which is growth within a player. And I will say, despite the fact that it did not go your way tonight, and obviously by the nature of it only being 4 questions, the score will always look a little lopsided. You showed that tonight. You came in much better, looking much better than in your match against Joe. I think you really did grow a lot. I think the extra work you put in really helped. And again, I hate having to hand a loss to somebody who I think has improved so much, because that's all I want for the people in this league, is to get better.
I wouldn't ask for anything but for you to play it real.
Absolutely, man. And again, how are you feeling after it?
I feel good. Obviously, losses aren't awesome, but I feel improved. I know it'll take a minute before I get my next match, which is good. It gives me more growth in movies in general. So yeah, I'm excited to play again whenever I get the opportunity. Excited to watch Andy go on. Excited to watch Joe go on. Hopefully those guys get to meet, and I feel better for losing to Titans. We already know Joe is. Andy is fantastic too. So
absolutely. And as I said, we'll be looking, especially as we get further and further into the tournament, when we start reaching the semifinals and the finals. That's a little bit of a quick turnaround for some of the competitors. So we'll be starting to squeeze in some other matches and kind of lay it out a little bit more. So it will be a little longer before we see you, but I promise I won't make you wait too long. Jake, it was great to have you here again, and I look forward to having you back. And hopefully next time, well, I never hope that it's me, but hopefully someone can hand you the victory next time. We will see you then.
Thank you. Have a great night.
All right, guys, and that is that. The first matchup in both of the tournaments, and what a great one it was. That was a great way to kick us off. Really competitive, really back and forth. These gentlemen did a great job. And next week, going up, we have the match that will decide who plays Andy. We have JD Domash and Matt Beer going at it. And, of course, over the next number of months, all the great matches from the tournament going up. Please be sure to subscribe. Please be sure to check out all the great Movie Battleground content, and be sure to check out everything else that we have here on TMG Entertainment. I want to give a special shout out and thanks, of course, to my great judges that were here with me tonight, Mr. Jacob Barber, Mr. Haven Pendergast, and despite the fact that it didn't work out for more than one question, Mr. Kevin Poss. You may not have said a word, but you were here in our spirits. On behalf of everyone here at TMG Entertainment and Mr. Matt Beer, I am Aaron Knoll, and we'll see you next time on Movie Battleground. Take care, everybody.